It's that time again for the assault on your ears we call Lower Dorks, a Star Trek Lower Decks podcast. I'm Aaron, and with me is Stavros. Tonight on our screens is episode 9 of season 2, Wej Douge, and in our cups is a little Jameson Black Barrel.
Yes, this is my first time having this particular Irish whiskey at your recommendation. And we are actually both drinking our drinks from a Lower Decks Cerritos bar logo rocks glass. You can get yours at StarTrek.com's shop. They're not a sponsor, but it does look pretty nifty seeing the Jameson in there. You know, I'm just not sure. You know, we've done a lot of drinks this season. A lot of them are whiskeys. I'm just not sure that whiskey is for me. After all this, I think I'm about several sips in at this point. It's getting better, but I'm just not sure I'm a whiskey man.
Oh, I can't believe you're trashing on my Black Barrel. This is far and away my favorite whiskey. It's not the smoothest whiskey out there, but it has a deep smoky flavor that just fills all your taste buds, and it goes down easy. It's so fantastic.
It does have a very rich flavor, I'll give it that. I'm just not sure. Maybe I need the flavored stuff. Maybe that's my thing. I'm just that kind of whiskey drinker.
I understand. You're that kind of man who has no taste.
Yes, it very well could be. But now that we've covered the drink, should we talk about the episode a little bit?
That sounds like a reasonable proposition.
Well, in this episode, I liked your pronunciation of Wej Douge, by the way. I don't know if I could do the Klingon quite as well.
I don't know if it's accurate or not, though. I'm just winging it here.
Well, anyway, in this episode, on board the Cerritos, Boimler tries to find himself a bridge buddy, but at the same time, on the Klingon bird of prey, Cheta, Mash tries to aspire to be the ship's first officer, while on the Vulcan cruiser Cheval, T'Lyn gets in trouble for her constant outbursts. And in the end, all plots converge as the three ships meet the Pakleds clump ship, which is named Pakled.
Yes! Welcome to our ship.
I enjoyed this episode a lot, just to start the conversation out with that. I think it's easily one of the best episodes of the season so far, if not the entire show. I don't know, did you have that knee-jerk?
Definitely, I had a hard time watching it critically, even on the second watch-through. I was just enjoying it so much that it was really hard to be subjective, and I'm sure there are problems with it, and I'm sure there's tons of details I missed, but overall, just a fantastic episode. As you mentioned, there are 3 subplots, all following lower deckers from different races that come together in the end. And what's really interesting about that is, I believe the title in Klingon literally translates to 3 ships.
Yeah, I was actually going to mention that the text for the episode name usually shows up in English, but having it show up in Klingon was pretty darn cool.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, that's the Klingon translation for the episode name anyway, right? It's 3 ships. So makes sense. Although, you know, we're going to get into this later, but there are actually 5 ships in this episode, but 3 main ones. If I were to nitpick, I would say it should be called 5 ships.
Well, I mean, there's the storyline focuses on the crew of 3 ships.
That's
I think
true.
You're picking nits here, Stavros.
I may or may not be. But let's talk about the different plots, shall we? Let's start with the one on board the Cerritos. And of course, as we mentioned, so Boimler needs a bridge buddy. By the way, bridge buddy, hilarious name for something that Boimler needs. Completely does seem like a Boimler thing.
I think that is a fantastic idea for a spin-off show. That's like an Odd Couple style show set in Star Trek universe.
Yes.
Bridge buddies. Would be fantastic. Like, you know, it's some high-ranking senior officer who's forced to bunk with a lower decker. Would be great.
I feel like that would completely fit with the theme of the show, too. That's pretty funny. But of course, yeah, Boimler, he doesn't have a lot going on this long warp. He actually suggests a Stratagema tournament. And if you remember that, that's a game that Riker played against an alien opponent in that TNG episode Peak Performance. That's the one where you like stick little finger gloves on and like you wave your fingers around in the air and play
was
it.
Was it Riker or Data where like Data couldn't beat the alien ambassador until he finally stopped playing to win and started playing just to survive?
Was it that? I think, do they both play in that episode? I know Riker for sure does. He kind of wanted to just go up against the Stratagema Master, and then does Data end up beating him or stalemate?
He fights him to a stalemate and can't actually win, despite obviously Data's superior machine intellect, which leads me to believe his opponent was probably cheating.
Well, he was a master, so we have to give him a little bit of credit there. But that was a pretty fun reference. I enjoyed that quite a bit. There's a lot of stuff going on at this point. A couple things I wanted to point out that were pretty interesting that happened in this scene. A lot of it is kind of like cool background stuff. Hilariously, a lot of the background stuff in this season takes place on background characters in the actual bar set. So, for example, there's a character in the scene where Boimler goes to Kayshawn to try and make him his bridge buddy, where there's a woman wearing a hijab, which I think is a first for Star Trek, I want to say. Don't really see a lot of that in this particular show. I know we've seen a turban, I think, in this show, but not a hijab.
Okay. I know you're all into fashion and clothing. It's not my cup of tea.
That's apparently something that I care a lot about.
I've
so
noticed.
Maybe I don't know if this counts as fashion and clothing, but I believe in the same scene there is a background character at the bar wearing a Katarian headset, the game headset from that TNG episode, The Game, where the woman tries to take over the ship by getting everyone addicted to endorphins by making them wear this weird headset. I'm a little concerned. Does the Cerritos crew just under the influence of the Katarian game right now?
It's actually funny that this pops up again in modern times, because it was a little prophetic. I mean, albeit they were making those same claims about video games in the 80s.
Yeah.
Not quite as true as some of the things we're seeing now with abusive gameplay loops and addictive gameplay loops that are being developed now. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to assume that this is much like Synthahol. They found something they liked and made a non-alcoholic version of it.
It's just not addictive, maybe. It's like a legal version of the Katarian headset.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah, those are some interesting finds so far. I'm a little worried that, so Boimler, of course, goes to see Rutherford and Shax in the, clay spinning room, which, of course, the Cerritos has one because, of course. And Boimler just completely offends Shax when he's talking about the Bajoran occupation. I feel like Boimler might know a thing or two about the Bajoran occupation, but maybe that is something that his book smarts have failed to learn about Shax. Is no one's spinning clay under Cardassian occupation when Shax was probably growing up on Bajor.
Here's the thing, though. And this scene really gets me, because what the hell, dude? It's been, what?
It's like dark.
20 years since the Bajoran occupation? And albeit in the real world, and probably in Star Trek, as portrayed by Picard himself, PTSD never really goes away. You can treat it, but if your stage of PTSD is somebody mentioning the location your trauma happened, sends you into a blind rage, I feel like the ship's counselor is not doing his job.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about Miglimo too. Like that bird man needs to do some work with Shax. I mean, he's been dead recently.
Just get fired and replaced with somebody competent.
Yeah, we don't know how good Miglimo is.
Or maybe that's the problem with the Federation. It's all happy-go-lucky good times, so they're used to dealing with people who are like, I did not get the toy I wanted for Christmas when I was 6. And then they're like, yes, well, we can work through this. And then Shax shows up and, I spent 30 days in the wilds living off of the flesh of dead Cardassians. And it's all like,
oh dear.
Would you like puppet therapy?
Miglimo's like, I don't know what to do with this, so here, do some clay. Some clay spinning.
The other part for me is, I refuse to believe that was the experience of all Cardassians during the occupation. Bajorans.
Or Bajorans, yeah.
Bajor is a world of, what? How many billions of people? It's a world. Sure. It's just like Earth. And you're telling me a foreign power occupied every corner of that planet? There had to be corners of the planet that, there's nothing of value there. Like Delaware, right? So they just never bothered to occupy.
Right. Well, when the Bajorans were first introduced in TNG, they kind of paint them out to have, several, colonies that are under, kind of loosely connected and are kind of like a loose cannon. Maybe, you could have easily been from a non-Bajor colony.
Yeah,
Bajoran colony.
There were Bajorans living off-world who had escaped the Cardassian occupation,
Exactly.
I don't know. So I'm in Boimler's corner here. It's not reasonable for him to expect mentioning Bajor would be such a huge trauma for Shax.
The Shax needs some help, man. Call a competent counselor as soon as possible.
Yeah, buddy. Get help. It's okay.
Get some help.
It disappoints me that Rutherford isn't there trying to get him the help he needs. Not a very good friend, that Rutherford feller.
I know. All he's doing is sucking up to him, trying to get... Rutherford has 2 bridge buddies in this episode, by
I
the
don't
way.
think he does, though. Shax,
You don't think so?
think
They don't show him and Billups. They don't show Rutherford and Billups.
Him and Shax have a very deep shared Lovecraftian trauma where they have stared into the abyss and it stared back into them.
Right.
But I'm not sure if Billups is really Rutherford's bridge buddy. Is this Rutherford's and Billups' first date?
What?
Yeah.
No. They don't show it. It couldn't have been that important.
You know what? They don't show it, so maybe it's, not... they didn't show... oh, damn. They did show Keiko and O'Brien. They didn't show...
They show a lot of stuff this season, man. And,
and
Rutherford and Billups tasting soup,
yeah,
which was their activity, was not one of them.
Yeah, it sounds like a date to me.
I don't know. Tenderford forever.
Rougher lips, ride or die, baby.
Although speaking of Rutherford, during this show, when Boimler is back talking to the other lower deckers, did you notice Rutherford working on the DS9 model that they show the box of in the Duplers episode?
I did, and it's fantastic, because the first time I watched it, I'm like, why the hell has he got a model of DS9? And then the second time, I'm like, oh, right.
Internal consistency. Yeah, I love it.
It's a lot of effort there, guys, for a silly
I know.
show.
All the effort. I want all the effort.
All the effort.
But anyway, Boimler goes and sees some other crew members too. He goes to check out T'Ana and Tendi in the holodeck scaling a mountain. And of course, there's a lot of Star Trek V references in there where Boimler is wearing the...
Go climb a rock?
Yeah, that's right. And the rocket boots. Clear Star Trek V reference.
He's Spock flying up the mountain while Kirk is climbing. And why is Kirk climbing?
Because William Shatner directed the film.
His answer was...
Yes.
Because it's there. So here's my question.
Oh, I see.
If it's holographic, is it really there?
Did they say that in this episode, though? I know that's in Star Trek
No, they
5.
don't. I'm just saying. I have a lot of questions. Why are they climbing? I mean, T'Ana makes sense.
Yeah.
She's a cat. That's what they do.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
right. That's why
true.
Tendi's there. She's sucking up to T'Ana. My bad.
Exactly.
It all makes sense now.
The funny part about this scene is after Boimler falls and he exits the holodeck and he's looking all sad, he's still wearing the rocket boots. So the rocket boots were real.
Well,
They were not part of the holographic simulation.
Unless we're going by TNG pilot rules where somehow things can leave the holodeck.
Maybe we are. I was a little concerned. I think Boimler could have really hurt himself there.
Well...
And as we all know, T'Ana gave no Fs about the safety protocols.
I would assume that the safety protocols are automatically on, and you have to manually shut them off. Otherwise, that's just bad
I would think
design.
so. Although, as we all know, holodecks are easily going on the fritz. So, but let's see what else happens in this A plot. So Mariner. It's kind of a subplot of the A plot. Mariner and Captain Freeman hanging out together, having some mommy-daughter time. They, of course, have the phaser target practice thing where they're discussing some womanly issues, and Boimler cannot leave the target range fast enough. But my favorite, actually, was when they're playing... I think it kind of sounded like a Starfleet version of Clue, where they discuss the killer being the chef with the weapon that can shoot through walls, which is, of course, that TR-116 rifle. And Mariner says chefs are shady. And I don't know, is that a dig at Chef in Enterprise, or are all Cisco fans going to have to take offense?
Here's my thing. She served under Cisco.
That's right. She's been on DS9,
Yeah, she was
right?
serving on DS9 when Cisco was there. So, I feel like she would have more of an understanding. Maybe she didn't like Cisco. Maybe Cisco reprimanded her. I would love to see Avery Brooks reprise his role as Cisco, and it's just 5 minutes of him chewing out Mariner in that angry Cisco voice. Oh, it would be fantastic.
That would be
But
amazing.
yeah, and I think the phaser range scene was probably a callback. It's shown up several times. I, for some reason, remember Guinan. Was it Guinan and Picard enjoying a good bout of phaser target practice? I think there's actually a game where you shoot at things that's shown up before. Oh, it even showed up in Lower Decks last season, didn't it?
I think so. It showed up a number of times. I think there's even Voyager where Seven and Captain Janeway shoot at the disc that's flying around or whatever.
Yes, definitely. I feel like if phasers were a real thing with a stun setting, I'm betting kids would play phaser tag. Literal phaser tag. Not laser tag where it just turns on lights, but they just run around shooting each other, knocking each other out.
That's one way to keep your toddler under control is give all the toddlers a phasers with lock descending one, and they just...
So when I was talking about kids, I'm thinking like 10-year-olds or 12-year-olds, and you're like, yeah, let's just phaser the baby. He's a little cryy today. Do I need to call
This
CPS?
episode just got really dark. Yeah. I'm constantly thinking of ways to keep my toddler under control.
I think
maybe it's good that phasers aren't
I think
real.
any toddler owners are.
I think so. But let's see. Back to the way that this A plot gets resolved, sort of, is Boimler hanging out with Commander Ransom, who honestly he should have just gone to Ransom in the first place, since Ransom is probably his direct superior since he's in command division.
Well,
I would think.
and he's kind of starting to show himself as Boimler's Chadish, if you will.
Yes. Oh, I like the reference. Nice. But yeah, honestly, it's. There's the whole plot where Boimler says he's Hawaiian like the rest of them, but of course none of them turn out to be Hawaiian, and then the rest of them are of this group they figure out they're from various moons, but Boimler's not. But you know what? Ransom, I gotta hand it to you, man. I know Ransom is your favorite character on this show, and Ransom really proves himself in this episode. I was worried that he was going to completely lose his mind at Boimler for lying, but you know what? He even says, "I like you guys for you."
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? Wow, I feel really good right now.
I keep saying it. He puts on this air of like bravado and machoism and, has this ego. But like underneath all of that, he's like true blue Starfleet. He is like the embodiment of what we should aspire to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotta say, this is changing my mind about Ransom.
Only.
I was like, wow.
Yeah. I mean, he is the man I desire to be. I mean, only except for in the ab area. I like garlic bread a little too much.
You know what? When you can replicate whatever food you want.
Yeah, it's hard to lose
It's hard to
weight.
control your eating. I thought that Ransom sending Boimler the cadet really showed that Ransom actually knows how to be a real boss, and he's not just a meathead. So
a big part of leadership is pairing people up based on synergies and who is best for each other. There's always like this easy thing you can do when you're in a leadership role, and that's just like, those two guys like each other, I'll let them work together. And it's all like, that's not always the best direction to go.
Yeah, You're totally right there. I thought that was a good kind of summary of the A-plot, all the things that happened there. Are we missing anything, or is there anything in this A-plot that you really liked or want to point out?
No, I think we hit on all of the important things. I will talk about something towards the end that happened in the A-plot, but it's really a part of the resolution. We mentioned Mariner and her mother and their bonding, and there's some exchanges in this that I think were rather ominous from a writing and storytelling perspective. But I don't like ominous, so let's move on to something more fun.
Well, okay. That is certainly something we can do. Let's talk about the B-plot. It takes place aboard the Klingon bird of prey Cheta, which I did a little research, and apparently Cheta means ruler, and I assume that means like someone who rules something, not like something you use to measure
assumed
things.
it was meant for a measurement device. My bad.
You got to say, some things are like 6 birds of prey long.
I served first with honor aboard the tape measure.
Maybe that's what they're going for. Maybe that ship is more of a measuring specialist.
I was kind of disappointed that they didn't design a new Klingon ship.
Yes, I could tell. I know. I bet you were excited about the Vulcan ship, which we were talking about in a little bit. But yeah, they're kind of good. They kind of went back to the bird of prey
which is era appropriate, and for whatever reason, that's
sure.
But not for whatever reason. It's all about production values, and it is a good looking ship.
Yeah, that's true. So let's see. The Cheta is captained by the evil Captain Dorg. That's Dorg, one of the many random Klingon names.
Are we sure it's Dorg though? Because
pretty sure
when I first watched and I heard it pronounced, it sounded like Torg to me, which of course was the officer serving under Kruge in Star Trek 3. I think it's Kruge.
Right.
But then later I'm listening to it, and the first time they mention his name, I think they call him Tog, and then later it's Dorg. Ooh. And I'm just like, the fuck's going on here?
I watched it with the subtitles on. I think the original first officer is Tog, Togg, and that guy gets taken out. And then the captain is Dorg, and then the character, like the lower decker that we follow here, is Mach, M''ACH.
Yes, is that Mach or Ma'ach?
Ma'ach.
Ma'ach.
In the subtitles, it has an apostrophe in there, but the way they pronounce it in the show is just like all one thing.
Yeah,
Mach. But we have some interesting cameos here. The Captain Dorg is voiced by Colton Dunn, who has some comedy experience. He's done some Key and Peele work, and if you've seen the show Superstore, he's the store worker in the wheelchair. I'm not sure what his character name is, but he was like a regular on that show. And then Mach is voiced by John Curry, who's done a ton of video game work, and he's had a lot of smaller TV roles. So kind of interesting cameos there.
Yeah.
Let's see, but a lot of fun stuff happening here. I love it. They showed the corridor where all the Klingons sleep, and of course it's like almost exactly the same as sleeping in the hallway Starfleet guys. The one guy sharpening his teeth was especially hilarious in like the tiny little mirror.
Yeah, and they wake up Mach by punching him in the face.
Very Klingon.
Yeah, it was very apparent very quickly that Mach is supposed to be Klingon Boimler with his brown nosing and his knowledge of obscure history. Yes. And especially in the fact that he gets himself into ridiculous situations, like being trapped under a Targ and then being trapped under a passed out Klingon veteran.
Yeah, at first I didn't see it, but after you mentioned it, he does all this badass stuff too, like challenge Captain Dorg to a duel. And at first I was like, that's not Boimler, but I'm like, wait. Season 2 Boimler is actually a badass. I think you're right.
Well, and more than that, I think Boimler would do that if he felt that, Captain Freeman was betraying her Starfleet oath.
Yes. I think, he wouldn't challenge her to a duel to the death.
Well, not a duel to the death, but he would attempt to have her removed from command. I do love their comment about, they're always all like, all about, blood and honor in combat, and they're making fun of serving on a Vulcan starship. And they're all like, oh, Vulcans are all like, avoid death and cower, and given the Vulcan.
That was one of the best one-liners from this episode.
Well, and it's funny because it started, this is like a running gag throughout it, where they reference in the beginning, Boimler references serving on a Klingon Lower Decks.
Yes.
And they're like, that's horrible, you have no idea. And he's like, what? They've been out there for centuries. They got to have that stuff on point. And then we see it, and they're in the exact same situation.
Exact same. At least they have a way to get promoted. You just murder the person above you, which is totally legit. You can't just do that on the Cerritos.
So I do want to comment on a couple of things about the captain. The first is that he quoted Shakespeare, which is like
which line?
Towards the end, and of course,
let's slip the dogs of war, right?
And so
I feel like he's quoting the villain from Star Trek 6. Whatever that dude's name was, Eye Patch Man?
Yeah.
Doesn't he say that?
But, I mean, that's it. He famously was quoting Shakespeare, and they even, in the beginning, reference seeing Shakespeare in the original Klingon. But it kind of made me wonder, so, are just all Klingons into Shakespeare? Or is it just some Klingons? Or is it they're into some Shakespeare, like the ones that are all about, conflict and war and death? Or are there, Klingons out there who are, jamming to... Midsummer Night's Dream or As You Like It. I got questions here about Klingon culture.
I feel like we need some questions asked. Obviously there was so after first contact with humans and Klingons, some Klingon went to Earth and stumbled upon Shakespeare and did he just cherry pick the one, like you said, the ones that have the most violence and were like, this will sell well in the whole world. Let's ship this back to Cerritos.
I feel like every alien culture is probably doing that.
Yeah, it was something about the violent plays really resonate with the Klingons, perhaps. Yeah. Maybe that's what it is.
And so the other thing I want to mention about this guy, Dorg, I don't know if you noticed anything about his evil laugh. Did it sound familiar to you at all?
What? No.
Do you not listen to our podcast?
I listen to it a lot while I'm doing everything.
I know a guy who laughs just like Dorg. In fact, I'm talking to him right now.
Do I sound like an evil Klingon when I laugh?
No, because he didn't sound like an evil Klingon. He just sounded like a dork.
Oh, no. Well, you know what? Maybe that's why he's dead.
Wow, that's
he didn't make
getting
it.
a little dark on this podcast, Stavros.
I'll take it. Someone was getting paid lots of voiceover monies to voice it. Saying I sound like Colton Dunn, who, like I said, has big recurring roles in TV shows. I guess I'll take it. Take that as a compliment. Anyway, what else? Oh, you know what? Speaking of the Klingon segment, I have a very tiny introduction into a sub-segment that I like to call Dammit Mike. And I think you might be able to guess what this is about. What is it about the Klingons that shows up in this episode that you only see one other time in the Star Trek franchise? That's the purple blood.
Yeah.
Are we retconning Klingon blood to be purple now?
Well, I mean...
Why?
I don't think we're retconning.
Why is it purple
I think
now?
it's we're returning to the original continuity. This is a fix to how it should have always been.
That's what a retcon is.
No.
So are we retconning all Klingon blood to be pink now?
Well, it was always supposed to be.
What is going on, Mike? Now we're going to have to go back to, like, all of the Blu-rays and, like, retcon all of the red Klingon blood to be purple. Is this the best time to retcon Klingon blood, Mike? Really?
It's not a retcon. That's how the blood appeared in Undiscovered Country. That's like a famous thing where it's all like, it looks like Pepto-Bismol. It's all like, you know what? I wonder if they just never get stomach aches because they're in their veins runs.
But like ever since then, in all TNG and DS9 and so on, it's always been red. But now we're back to purple. And it's just confusing. Well, pink, I just don't like confusion in my Klingon blood colors.
Thank you. Not purple.
Oh, is it pink?
Yes.
Okay. Still.
They just didn't have the production values, you know? It's like you look at TOS and you go, why are they just humans in terrible makeup and weird wigs? Well...
Didn't they do that to avoid, like, an R rating for Star Trek 6, something like that?
I don't care why they did it. It was awesome, and they need to keep it that way.
Now I'm all confused. What color is Klingon blood? It's just pink. I guess we're just now it's just pink. And now I'm all confused, and it didn't have to be this way.
It always was,
but
my
here
friend.
We are.
It always was.
Oh God! But speaking of, try segue into my non-DAMMIT Mike segment. But the cool thing I did see that was in scenes that had Klingon blood in it was the return of a Klingon sword. And I bring this up because in some early TNG episodes, well, maybe not that early, but episodes with Worf, where he goes to kill Duras, actually, you can see on Duras's Klingon ship, there are a lot of like swords in the Klingon style, like on the walls. But after that, it becomes exclusively batleths. But this guy, Captain Dorg, he has it kind of looks like a dagger at first, but it's long enough to be like a short swordy. And I thought it was really cool. To see
You're talking about the one that's all like curved and weird shaped, right? That like would never work as an actual sword. I guess
so. It's the one that Mach takes because Dorg drops it during their duel, and Mach takes it and stabs him through the chest with it.
And, you know, I don't want to segue too hard here and get us off course, because this is about Star Trek and not swords. But as a man who owns a number of swords in a quantity that no man should own unless he is a medieval king,
okay,
none of the Klingon weapons make any dang sense.
Well, a sword makes sense, right?
Not in that shape.
But still, I thought it was cool to see. I remember seeing that episode because I did a TNG rewatch several months ago now, and I was like, wow, like those Klingon swords are cool. We should see more. And then you know the production staff was just like, oh, but batleths are the best, and you never see the swords ever again. But then in this one, you see a sword, and it's great.
Well, you know, for how absurd
someone even gets stabbed with it.
For how absurd the batleths were, they were a cool design.
That's true. They're very unique too.
If you know nothing about weaponry, they look like they should be functional.
Let's see. Well, do you have anything else about the Klingon plot that you want to mention?
Not really. I think it's time we moved on to something a little more friendly.
Yes, the Vulcans, the sea plot. This takes place on board the Vulcan cruiser Cheval, and I tried really hard to see if there was a translation for that, but I could not find it.
I think you mean the V plot. But
Wow, nice work. But gosh, if any listeners know if this is actually supposed to be a Vulcan translation for something, please let us know, because I could not find it. I'm curious to know if it is actually supposed to be translated to something, because I could not find it. But on board the Cheval, we have our starring lower decker, T'Lyn, T''Lyn, who is our renegade Vulcan. In capital letters, renegade. Very similar to Mariner. I think you were speaking before about how T'Lyn is basically Vulcan Mariner.
Yeah, Vulcan Mariner, Klingon Boimler. That's what this episode's all about. I hope they do this every season and just keep expanding the roster. And maybe we can eventually get Borg Rutherford and Jem'Hadar Tendi? No?
I guess it's possible. I
guess that doesn't really work. But yeah, I love the fact that just like Klingon Boimler, Vulcan Mariner is like the wild and crazy out there officer within Vulcan culture. And it's hilarious to watch that. That
was really great to see. I have a note here. The voice actress for T'Lyn is a woman named Gabrielle Ruiz. She is known for a recurring role on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend on that TV show, and she's done a number of other TV roles. So not a stranger to comedy here as well. kind of neat to see.
Yeah, and I think she also did a turn as a character on Law and Order, maybe. They've all been on Law and Order. I mean, you just throw that out about any actor or actress, and
That's true.
75% of the time you're going to be right.
I thought it was one of the best parts of this show, or of this episode, was T'Lyn interacting with the other members of the Vulcan crew, and every one of them telling her in monotone, after she says something to them in monotone, that she's having uncontrolled outbursts and is
out of control.
Out of control.
And of course, the moment that really hit me that she was Vulcan Mariner. Punitive spiritualism. They sent her to the brig. Ah, fantastic. Yeah. Although, did you notice anything about the Vulcans, to segue here a little bit, and their speech patterns?
No.
They all say sense ores.
Oh, yeah. You know, and I was watching the show, and of course one of them says sensor. I think the captain says sensors, and I almost lost my mind, because that is just like Star Trek has ruined for me now because of sensors. And I was like, you know what? I bet you I'm just overreacting, but here we are talking about it anyway. So
yeah,
this is just my life now.
You know what? And you obviously aren't the only one that noticed that, because otherwise, why would it show up so often in this series?
I think you're right.
And it's interesting, too, because T'Lyn even uses the sensors, but she's much more subtle about it, which I think, again, is a nod to her being the, out there free thinker.
Yeah, that was
great.
And
you know what the other thing she does that Mariner does? She wears her uniform wrong.
Oh, I didn't notice
Mariner
that.
always has the rolled-up sleeves and very often the open jacket. And T'Lyn, she wears her robe, and it's not cinched like everybody else's around the waist.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was a really neat
That's really cool.
Visual cue. Very, very good design work on this show.
Great job. Yeah, I didn't notice that. Although I did, at that point where they're in the meditation chamber, she does quote some Spock in there, though. She goes, "Logic is the beginning of wisdom and not the end," which is something that Spock says in Star Trek VI. And, it's kind of ballsy quoting Spock, like, a revered Vulcan figure, half Vulcan figure.
Is he?
In your defense.
Is he revered on Vulcan, though? I've always kind of wondered that.
I think so. He's like a decorated ambassador before he went to hang out on the Romulan homeworld.
I don't necessarily think he was that revered, though. Maybe he is by now, but... And I think that's like a fantastic reference for her, where it very much shows her character, because that's the whole story of Spock's character, is his evolution. Discounting the TOS pilot, where he is a grinning weirdo, that's his thing. He's very logical, but he has a hint of humanity in him, and he's surrounded by humans, and he frequently gives in to his less logical thought processes. And even there's one episode in TOS where by the end he has this newfound respect after he leads a disastrous mission, and suddenly realizes, and I think that's probably where this phrase comes from.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. Gosh, yeah, a lot of depth to this character that we can already identify. I think especially, something else she does that's similar to Mariner is she does a not quite as facetious, but still facetious Vulcan salute when she's leaving the captain's quarters.
Yeah, totally a missed opportunity for a Vulcan to give the sarcastic Vulcan salute, as you have so desired for so long.
It's still pretty sarcastic. She kind of as she's leaving, it doesn't even look and still salutes. I still got a lot of sarcasm from it, but it's not quite as Mariner as perhaps she will get in the future of the show.
And this is one of those things that actually kind of bothers me with the portrayal of Vulcans here, is they are extremely stick in the mud, straight backed, serious, hardcore adherence to logic and failure to understand other people. Tuvok was very much that way. But it's heavily implied that he is on the extreme end of Vulcan culture.
I think you're right. He was almost a culinary master, where he was all logic all the time.
Yeah, and it was when he joined Starfleet. And I loved that, because I always talk about that after that episode aired, was all like, oh yeah, back when Tuvok was a hardcore racist. And I feel like they lean too much into that Tuvok portrayal, where it seems to be that's not the modern Vulcan culture, but they have a long way to grow on that path to acceptance. But at the same time, they're not the rigid adherence to logic and we're right all the time, despite the fact that they're constantly wrong.
Honestly, Vulcan portrayal has been all over the place in the franchise. I mean, in DS9 we have the racist Vulcan too, so
Yeah.
it's hard to say exactly what like the average Vulcan's like.
But they were also, racist Vulcans who embraced a alien culture's illogical sport and played it to the hilt.
That's true. That's very true. One other thing I want to mention about the Vulcan subplot here is that in all of the scenes, all the Vulcans are all speaking in monotone. And at first I thought it was funny the whole time, but I was like, it got to the point at the end where I was like, I'm glad this is over, because if the entire show was like Vulcan characters talking to one another in monotone, I would stab myself in the ear probably.
Yeah, weird. Didn't bother me at all.
Very difficult to listen to.
No.
Really?
Fine.
It was just a little too much. Like you could tell like the director told the voice actors like, okay, speak in monotone and try and be really boring. It'll be funny.
No.
And it was. But I was like, I don't want the whole show like
this. It gave me a warm, fuzzy feeling that just reminded me of my upbringing.
Is that what your upbringing was like?
Yeah, when the computer would tell me stories at night.
Oh, cute little baby Aaron being told stories by the monotone computer.
Yeah, and then it would spit out nutrient paste in the morning.
I love it. We should talk more about your upbringing during this show. I think it's going to get us a lot of listeners.
I feel like those aren't the kind of listeners we want.
Wow, you just insulted all nutrient paste upbringing kids.
Yeah, all three of them. I mean, oh no.
Well, you know what? Let's move on to the very end, where the A, B, and C plot all come together for the resolution of the episode.
Red alarm!
Yeah! Another one of the best parts of this show was Red Alarm. Red Alarm on the board of the Pakleds ship. Yeah. Before we get into Pakleds, because I do want to talk about them, when the plots do come together, like the whole resolution of this episode is like super Star Trek-y. I love it to bits. Mach coming back and murdering his captain because he knows something's wrong, and then the Vulcans coming in to save the Cerritos and putting the Pakleds in their place. I love it. It's some of the best Star Trek has to offer, and I want to see more of that.
Yeah, I feel like this had a very Star Trek ending where all of the elements, when they come together, they're kind of pulling from different stories or from different series. So,
right.
Like the story of the Klingons and the Klingon crew member overthrowing his captain is very DS9. That was a big story of Worf, and in TNG as well, but more so in DS9, where it's explicitly called out that Worf has this view of who a Klingon is supposed to be and the culture he's supposed to live in, and his people don't live up to that at all. And that's very much what happens in this episode. This Klingon who believes in Klingon culture sees his captain is not living up to it and overthrows him when nobody else will.
Yeah.
The Vulcan ship, even in the face of a crew member who is doing things they're not supposed to, who has gained knowledge in an inappropriate way, they don't disregard that knowledge. They act on it. Something strange is going on. Yeah. We have a duty to investigate.
Right.
The Cerritos. Everyone's on vacation, and they immediately give it up without a second thought to come to the ship's aid. And the Pakleds are Pakleds. Anyways, moving on.
Yeah, I loved it a lot. But you know what? We should talk about the Pakleds, because the fourth ship of the 5 ships in this episode, but not enough to actually deserve its own plot, is the Pakled spaceship Pakled. Another hilarious one-liner. One of my favorite aspects of that is when the Klingon captain beams over to the Pakled ship, and Rebner, the Pakled captain, introduces himself. and the Klingon captain's like, "Ah, yes, Rebner, we've met several times." He's like, "I know." Really great. And he has to like educate him on how bombs work.
Yes.
double great.
We used it and it stopped working. It's a bomb. That's how they work. Ah, so fantastic.
And even the lower deckers introductions, or we only get a very short scene with them, but their whole plot is they're just like during the fight, they're all just sitting near crates, and one of them's like, "I'm hungry."
Yeah.
And the other one's like, "You should eat something." I was like, "What the hell?"
Well, and I mean, that's a great gag, because the response is, "You're a genius." Like he think he should eat.
Oh man, but you know what? We've uncovered that the Klingons, or at least this one captain, Captain Dorg, is supporting the Pakleds. So is the Pakled mystery solved now? Is that why they're a threat? Because you got to understand that like the ships are like built on several species technology, right? So Is this just like an easy out by the writers to say like, yes, it's just one Klingon guy supporting them, or is it just one piece of the puzzle, do you think?
Well, they have mentioned previously the Pakleds using Klingon disruptors.
Right.
And we've seen them using Klingon disruptors. I think this is the answer, and it kind of disappoints me. I was hoping for something more ridiculous.
Yeah.
But, this doesn't mean this is the end of the Pakleds, or it doesn't mean that this is the end of the story. I mean, TNG rarely did long-form stories, but it still worked out as a series. But yeah, definitely a disappointing end to the Pakled threat.
I'm still holding on to a thread of hope, because yes, all of the hand weapons that the Pakleds use are Klingon, but you can see on their ships, like, their ships are made up of Bajoran and Romulan and Klingon, a bunch of other stuff, so there could be another thread here. I'm not totally positive because we've only got one episode left in the season, but I'm holding out hope. Maybe there's more to it.
Well, I mean, first you get the weapons, then you get the ship
bits.
parts. Then you get the things that make you go.
I guess that makes sense. I can see that. Let's see. Well, anything else you want to talk about the plot? Because I do have some random things about the episode I liked and I want to talk about, but anything else plot related?
Not really plot related, but there is that final scene where Ransom sends the young, what appears to be an acting ensign, because he is wearing the Wesley jumper from TNG.
Yes, the gray.
Yeah, after he got out of the rainbow romper and started wearing something that looked like a proper uniform. I thought that was a fantastic callback. I love that character. I love the voice he portrays. I love that. I just hope we're getting him back. I really want a Wesley 2.0 on this show.
I was surprised to see... Well, first of all, yes, the uniform is super cool. Although I think the Wesley uniform was gray on both the shoulders and the rest of the outfit, whereas these are, I want to say black on the shoulders and gray the rest. Either way, cool to see a cadet uniform in the show.
Don't ruin my joy.
Kind of surprised to see cadets on the ship, because this is the first time. I feel like we needed a way for Ransom to be cool to Boimler, but it was cool, like seeing the first shot of these cadets on there for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's see what else. Speaking of fashion, we're a big proponent of fashion on the show, or at least I am. One of the things I really liked was the Captain Freeman RITOS shirt, RITOS, which is a clear callback to the Discovery instance where they, it says disco on their shirts. And I gotta say, I saw it, and I have a shirt that says disco on it, like, off the StarTrek.com store. Now I need a RITOS one.
Yeah, no.
It was a cool callback. I need my fashion, apparently. But I don't think there's been a whole ton of Discovery references in general, so it was nice to see at least something there.
Yeah, well, and you know what? I think some of the best references they do are the visual references.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And that actually leads me to a bunch of visual gags that are in quick succession. There is this shot, if you recall, when the Cerritos goes to Red Alert and everyone has been doing their vacation stuff, and they all kind of like run out of the various rooms to assume their posts on the bridge. And there's a lot of, we're talking freeze frame references here that were cool to see. I picked out a Ambujitsu pair of people that were doing some Ambujitsu. There was either a Robin Hood, or it was either Robin Hood or Peter Pan. I couldn't quite piece it together, but it was some kind of outfit like that. I saw the Sherlock Holmes kind of pipe and robe combination.
Until you mentioned that, I never made that connection. But yeah, that's the outfit that Data wears when he's playing as Sherlock Holmes. Which I can't fathom why as a robot you would ever want to play as Sherlock Holmes.
I don't know. Maybe he figures he's similar enough to play that part.
Could be.
But that's not even all the references. There's the two characters wearing exercise outfits that you saw Dr. Crusher and Troy wear in the TNG episode The Price. That's when they're kind of doing their suggestive stretches, and then the Dr. Crusher leaves because Troy's love interest enters the scene. That's a very standout scene.
And I have no doubt that is a scene that everybody's probably saying, executives or whatever, they got to sex it up. And I'm like,
right.
That smacks of Roddenberry. The dude liked his women. And I can't fault him for that, But he had some weird ideas. Everybody bags on the cat suits that showed up in Voyager and TNG. But, Troy started that, and that was all Roddenberry. I have no doubt he would have approved of 7 of 9 and T'Pol.
I mean, the original series, come on. Yeah. There's a whole lot of sexy women floating around that show.
Nothing wrong with that.
Sexy men too.
Hey, you know what? The more sexy, the merrier.
Yep. Gotta have the sexy. But yes, other outfits. There is a Napoleon or French army outfit dude running around, and then some other characters in I want to say kind of Shakespearean outfits. They've got the neck.
Yeah,
I don't know what
that
you call
weird
it, ruffles or whatever that is.
Neck ruffle thing that you see in Renaissance paintings and theater.
Right. So a lot of fun, kind of very brief back-to-back references just during that one shot. It's fun. I didn't even notice a lot of these on my first playthrough, but when I did the freeze frame, I was like, oh, I recognize that. Yep. Some good times there. But that leads to potentially the best joke of the whole episode / even the whole show. And I think you know what I'm talking about.
The Borg Lower Decks!
So good.
So, I don't know if you noticed this, but one of the Borg... So they're all cyborged out, and they all have the, armor plating and covering of the late Borg. But one of them has perfectly normal lower arms.
Really? I didn't notice that.
I'm telling you, this is the Lower Deckers Borgified. I freeze-framed that scene, and I'm trying to figure out who's who, and the only one I've identified is Mariner.
Something else about that shot is they all have the arm attachments as part of the alcove, and that's early Borg. That goes away after the first couple of Borg episodes, I think. They just go into the straight standing position regeneration, so they definitely incorporated some early Borg into this. But anyway, it's a little disappointing that in Paramount Plus it does the streaming service thing where it kind of minimizes the show you're watching when it's at the end credits. And I was like, no, I need more of this joke, and I had to maximize the screen or whatever, because you can, the sound's going, and it's the Lower Deckers, the Borg Lower Deckers doing.
I just need that scene on loop.
It was so good.
So I do want to comment before we sign off for the evening.
Yes,
I had mentioned something previously about a scene that really got me from a storytelling and literary standpoint, where I had this moment where I'm like, oh no. So, there's the scene where they are playing Mariner and Freeman.
Right.
Whatever Star Trek clue, Federation clue, Starfleet clue, whatever you call it.
Right.
Did they give that thing a name?
I don't think they named it.
The point is...
It has the pieces of Sorry and the plot of Clue.
But the point is that at the end of that scene, there's a moment where, Mariner's going on her rant about how it's, it's always the chef and blah, blah, blah. Right. Then she gets up to leave, right? And there's this moment where she... her mother talks to her and says she had fun today, and Mariner stops in a very serious tone, says, I had fun too, and then the doors close. Yes. And it's this very poignant moment, and I'm like, oh no, the captain's gonna die. That's what happens after that scene in tradition literature, right?
No.
The mother-daughter, father-son, mother-son, daughter-father, estranged uncle, favorite toddler nephew, where they reconcile their differences. No. And then the older mentor figure dies. That is what happens. And so I'm like, it ends, and I'm like, hey, it didn't happen. That's great. But we got one more episode, so...
Oh, no. I noticed that, too. It does seem like there's a little bit of reconciliation there, and I'm a little worried, too. I'm perspiring. I'm worried. Are we going to see Captain Freeman's death?
I think you're a little emotionally invested in this silly animated series.
I think you may be right. Oh gosh. Well, you know what? Now I'm going to be worried about next episode. I feel like we're done here. Well, now I have to go worry.
Sleep tight, my friend, because I know that I'm going to pass out as soon as we sign off. Because I've had one too many, and that means we need to call it a night. You can catch us again next week for our season finale coverage. In the meantime, you can follow us on Twitter at Lower Dorks, or you can extend your sensors out to find an anomalous Metreon gas reading. Follow that trail and you'll find a lone podcaster handing out hand grenades to idiots.
That's you, right?
Yeah, I'm the podcaster. And you are?
I'm the grenades?
Yes, Stavros, you're the grenades. You're blowing up, son!